I don't allow people to use the intention within their practice particularly, certainly not at the treatment phase of what they're doing. We actually work on stepping away from it because intention is to me actually anti-Daoist, if you like. It's the antithesis to what Daoism is really about. Because Daoism really is about attention, not intention. And to me, the distinction between those two is the basis for going into the deeper levels of cultivation and the deeper levels of practice.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological. We have this idea in Chinese medicine of yin-yang and how as any process, cycle, season reaches its apex, it engenders and becomes its opposite. On a good day, this looks like the deep and complex structure of unity. On a bad day, it feels like betrayal. Solutions to our current problem feel good. They feel good because they bring along a sense of both possibility and resolution. We have a star to steer by and a concise to-do list. It feels satisfying to have a solution, and it certainly takes the edge off chaos and uncertainty when a clear and helpful direction comes into focus. But because of the great transformations of yin-yang, it's likely that the solution of today that does indeed solve a problem and is absolutely appropriate for the moment will in time sow the seeds of troubles that cannot be foreseen. All solutions have unintended consequences. And while it's possible to make some bad choices and fairly quickly reap the harvest of an ill-informed decision, over time, good decisions are going to be helpful, but only for so long. It's humbling to come up to that moment in time when you notice that you've painted yourself into a corner, that the trials of today have their roots in the good intentions and ideas of yesterday, that what was a brilliant move at one moment is potentially catastrophic in the next. I suspect this is the crux of difficulty when it comes to change, and why it's so hard to see problems clearly in a new light. Because when we find something that works, it's easy to think that it will always work, especially if we've been financially and socially rewarded. It's hard to escape the complacency that rides along with the feeling of success in overcoming of troubles. It truly is difficult to see how our solutions of the past have sown the seeds of our present difficulty. I don't have a solution for this tricksterish house of mirrors phenomena of solutions turning into problems, other than to know it's true that given time, what I hold to be right today might be quite wrong a few turns down the road. That what worked and worked splendidly in the past just might be the obstacle that now needs fresh eyes along with a soft and willing heart. That it's possible to recognize without blame or acrimony the solutions of the past were fine for that moment, but this is a new moment. Pruning away what was at one time supportive to growth, but has now become obstructive deadwood, that requires a sharp set of shears, a keen eye, and knowing where to cut. Deadwood is not wrong or evil. It's just no longer helpful at a certain point in time. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear Don't Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs. They ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plum Flower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com. And where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AcuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit acufastneedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
Navigating change is tricky, and I suspect it's tricky because we map our successes and our failures into our story of the world. But the world is bigger than our stories of it. The Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. There it is, right in the first sentence of the classic of the Way of Virtue, that we are embarking on an impossible mission, and this is the guidebook. It's no wonder Chinese philosophical thought in medicine can be so befuddling to the uncultivated mind. We need something to shake up our fixed sense of reality so that we might glimpse its infuriatingly fluid nature. There is something of the monkey trickster at work in a fellow who now runs an acupuncture school, but wasn't interested in Chinese medicine. In fact, didn't like it, but it was required in terms of study so that he could continue his martial arts practice. I always enjoy a good trickster story, and perhaps that is part of why I so enjoyed this conversation with Damo Mitchell. In this conversation, we puzzle into the significant differences between intention and attention, the electrical quality of the yang qi, and magnetism and field generation of the yin qi, along with some perspectives on qi, its cultivation, and use in clinic. Damo has a perspective on Daoism that just might turn a lot of what you think about it on its head. He's got a curious way of making the difficult to access somehow friendly and available. Let's get into it. Damo Mitchell, welcome to Qiological.
Hi, thanks for having me here.
Delighted to have you here. Trying to make things coordinate, and it's been a little tricky, as it can be in our modern world, but here we are today. We're going to talk a little bit about some inner alchemy and some Neigong and some Chinese medicine and maybe some Daoism. How do you talk about Daoism? Daoism is one of those things, when I think about Daoism, because I'm no expert in this stuff, which is why I'm sitting here talking to you. How do you even talk about it?
Yeah, well, it's one of those traditions, isn't it? One of those practices that the more you do, the more you realize you can't really speak about it. But I guess with Daoism, I get a little bit of a bad name for myself sometimes because I have a very different take on it to most people, I'm afraid. So quite controversial, I think, my views on Daoism and its place in medicine.
Okay, well, I think that's a really great place to start then, because this, after all, is a podcast about medicine.
Mm-hmm.
We often talk about Daoism in our profession.
Sure.
But again, it's one of those things that's so old. It's such a foreign idea to us modern people.
Yes.
Coming across time and language. I think it's hard to have an idea of like what it really is, like how much of it is our imagination and how much of it is something that we can get our hands around enough that maybe it helps us in our clinic. So I'd love to get your thoughts about what makes you kind of different, how you think about it.
Well, I think one of the key things for me with Daoism especially is, I think far from being an expert, I think I'm probably allowed an opinion on it now, just about, because I've been involved in it since I was 14, one way or another. But I don't see any of it as metaphorical, really, or any of it as imaginary, and all of it is completely literal. I don't believe it has any major connections to religion, really, which I think is a major misunderstanding on Daoism. And I think that's mostly what makes it very applicable to Chinese medicine as well. Because I think for many people that I've spoken to, the Taoist side of Chinese medicine is almost, how do you say, maybe that's the abstract bit, or that's the bit that, so maybe you go to college and you study TCM and you study points and you learn about syndromes and things like this, and then the Taoism almost to a lot of people gives like another aspect to their medicine, right? Like less grounded, if you like, or more cosmological or more spiritual. Whereas for me, it's the other way. I think the Taoism provides the most grounded, down-to-earth, literal side of the medicine. I guess the more I look at it, the more I see it in reverse from how a lot of people do. I don't know if that makes any sense. So when I read something like the Tao Te Ching, which to me is still the core text for Taoism, it's like reading a DVD instructional manual, A to Z, on how to build the DVD player or how to get it to plug in or something. And I think it very much applies to the nature of human mind and why it's the root for most internal disease, really. That's how I see Taoism. Because Taoism obviously was a meditation tradition, right? That's really what it was. All spiritual traditions, one way or another, are about unification with something. Unification with God, unification with spirit, unification with Tao. And the way to that was essentially to mastering the mind through meditation. So it has to be, by definition, Taoism has to be fairly clear. Because the last thing you want is something really abstract when you're trying to do something complicated like deal with your mind, if you get what I mean.
Absolutely. And then you take that and you put it in the context of working with patients.
Yes.
Now, there's some unclarity and uncertainty for you. That's just a prescription for uncertainty.
What, patients in general? I think so.
I mean, doing medicine.
Sure. Yeah. I think Chinese medicine has the danger of becoming very, very subjective. And I think sometimes, especially with regards to psychology or the root of people's illnesses, we can do the patients a little bit of an injustice if we don't have kind of clear guidance that we stick to. And to me, Taoism gives a lot of that, really. I think it applies very much to what we're doing. I don't believe that Taoism, I'm trying to skirt around it, so I don't want to be that guy that just upsets everybody constant all the damn time with his opinions, but I'm trying to skirt around it that I don't think Taoism has anything to do with nature. I think that's probably where I differ.
So this is great. And I love this because that's one of the favorite things I think us as a profession, it's not great to speak for everyone with, one voice, but
Sure.
generally speaking, I think a lot of us are really into this idea that, look, our medicine comes from nature. We're students of nature. We use the processes and forces of nature to help our patients. Taoism is all about getting connected to nature. And now you're going, yep, no.
Yeah, that's why I was skirting around it a little bit. Okay, so take this. Maybe you're coming at this direction. One of the things I was told very early on in Chinese medicine, when I was 14, I studied Chinese medicine just informally alongside other stuff.
What kind of teenager were you?
Oh, I hated Chinese medicine. So it was mandatory that For every couple of hours I did doing martial arts, they made me do Chinese medicine alongside it to balance out what I was doing. So it was a chore more than anything else, to be perfectly honest. So I started quite young, but I wouldn't say I was very good at it when I was young. Definitely not. I wouldn't have had a treatment off me, that's for sure.
That's great. So it was a chore. It was something that you had to do in service of studying this other thing that you were way more interested in.
Yeah, completely. And I was more interested in Daoism, to be perfectly honest, and martial arts was really what I was most focused on. When you start training, I was always told that story that Taoists looked to the outside world to understand the elements and yin and yang and things like this. And then the deeper I went into it, I came to the opinion that actually it's the opposite. They looked inside and it enabled them to understand what was happening outside to a larger degree. It's just that with something like meditation or spiritual practice, sometimes it's easier to use the reference of an outside archetype to enable us to understand a complicated concept. And I think that's where where medicine and Daoism met, really, it was very good at providing kind of context for the deeper parts of what was happening inside of us by using these symbols from the outside. So that's why I think it's very literal. You just have to be able to peer through their symbology a little bit.
And in this case, if I'm following this correctly, that outside world of nature, more than being an actual thing, it's more like, well, here's a myth, here's a story that will tell you something about what's on the inside. And once you sort of grok what's happening on the inside, now you've got something to work with.
Yeah, I would say so. Just like anything, isn't it? If you start studying something, you need a simplistic concept to get you in the door. And then you have to go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And Chinese medicine is very much like that, isn't it? You have a simple concept, and then 10 years later you realize, oh my God, that simple concept has exploded out into something that's almost a lifetime study on its own. So I think Daoism needed to provide those kind of models to guide us, but obviously Chinese medicine is influenced by other traditions as well.
So this piece about looking on the inside, that makes a certain sense, of course. If we got a sense of what's going on inside of us, number one, we got some kind of an anchor. And whether that's mythology or nature or theories of Chinese medicine, whatever. Here's one of the things that seems very slippery to me about looking on the inside is that, what is something that's, I'm just going to call it kind of real and stable? Like, what's reliable and what's imagination?
Well, I think there's two sort of factors around that. One is at the beginning you won't be able to tell what's real and what's imagination at all, not even slightly. I think anybody who's practiced any form of cultivation, in my experience, lacks discernment at the beginning. That's one of the most difficult qualities. That's why every little thing you feel becomes significant when probably it's not. It's hard to tell what's important and what's not when you're doing that kind of work. But then the other side to it is that only applies to people. How do we say this politely? Well, let's use the Taoist term, which is quite rude. The vulgar people is the term they use, meaning that, I'm sure you've heard that, meaning the sort of regular person. But the highly cultivated individuals, which are certainly very rare people, I certainly wouldn't count myself as one of those, but a highly cultivated person has obviously spent a lot of years training clarity and discernment so that when they start looking inside the body, that which is real becomes a little bit more apparent. And then hopefully those people are the ones that founded the system and founded the tradition to provide guidance, would be how I see it. So I'm aiming, hopefully, over the course of this life, to try to at least develop a little bit of discernment so I can also ascertain what's real on the inside of the body. But for now, I have the tradition as guidance.
Okay. Tradition as guidance.
But not a prison.
Not a prison. Yeah, okay. Again, very slippery stuff. I love the idea of having something to lean on that can guide me, for sure, especially in the practice of medicine, which we know you could spend your whole life doing this and barely scratch the surface of it.
Yeah, totally, yeah. Especially with medicine. Here's an idea. I'll run this by you, see what you think of this. Maybe you'll disagree, but I'm always curious what people think of this. Say we say that Chinese medicine primarily came from spiritual traditions, whether it's Daoism or at least people who had some kind of cultivation, would be my assumption. It doesn't seem like a thing that's created by trial and error. Seems a little bit too complicated for that to be the case. I think it comes from people with a certain degree of cultivation. Well, every other system that I can see that comes out of that tradition, say Daoism, is purely based upon achieving union with Tao. That's it. Like it becomes a cultivation system. It doesn't matter whether it's martial arts. Feng Shui, if you go deep enough, turns into a cultivation system. Alchemy, Qigong, all spiritual practices to cultivation. I don't believe Chinese medicine is any different. I believe that Chinese medicine is a personal cultivation system at its deepest level more than anything else. It's just using the vehicle of medicine for somebody else as the vehicle for that cultivation, if you get what I mean. And I think that's why it has so much depth, because you're constantly self-improving, or you should be, while you are practicing as a doctor, as a therapist. But I don't know what you think of that. I'm curious to. It's my working theory. It could be insane, Michael.
Well, it could be, but here's the great thing about working. I like to think of it as a hypothesis because you haven't quite proved it yet, right? It's an idea. It's a work in progress.
Yes.
I would come down on the side of agreeing with you about that, and here's why. I really appreciate that I do live in this modern moment. I appreciate we have things like the scientific method. I think it's a fabulous way of discerning. We're back to that.
Yes.
Like what's reliable and true and useful.
Yep.
And again, what's my imagination or just a social construct, which is a word that gets tossed around a lot these days. Like how do you suss out what's sort of real and what's imagination?
Yeah.
And I think the scientific method is useful for that. It has its place, and we've kind of turned it into a fetish in a way in our modern day, especially when it comes to medicine. Like if it's not in the literature of the scientific studies, blah, 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 it's probably not real.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's one way to go about things. But again, then we're back to this, well, how do you know for yourself?
Mm.
Like I'm sitting with a patient. Do I even know if I'm looking at excess or deficiency?
Sure.
There's a good one. There's a razor you can use to slice reality a bit and go what's what. And my suspicion is that there are people who lived in a non-modern time. They had very, very different sensoriums than we did.
Okay.
They didn't have a choice about living with nature. You know?
Sure.
So they probably had a different way of understanding the world and themselves. And then, you know, like anything, there's a process of refinement. I love that term, the vulgar people. You know, there was a whole thing here in the United States back during the election with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. What did she call them? The deplorables. There were a bunch of right-wing people. She called them deplorables. And they took it on and went, yeah, we're deplorables. We're the vulgar people. That's us.
Oh, really? They adopted it, did they?
Yeah, they adopted it. It's like, oh, you're calling us vulgar? Yeah, we are vulgar. Fuck you.
Fair enough. Way of responding to it, I guess. Yeah.
But that idea of vulgar as not refined,
Sure.
like stepping away from good, bad. Let's call it refined, not refined. And so, yeah, I'm being very long-winded here in saying my suspicion. I also have that working hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
There's this element of cultivation that gives us a clarity with who we are as we're doing our work with somebody else, and then we might be able to be helpful to them because we're a still enough pond that maybe we can get a sense of what's going on with someone else. That's where I come down at this point. How does that land with you?
I think that's pretty fair to say. I mean, and also as a cultivation system, it's the ultimate form of service, right? Which every spiritual practice has given credence to as being an important part of the path. So it seems sensible to me that your cultivation and your service would go hand in hand, which is how medicine, why they would use it as a system like that. I think also on top of that, there's another side to it as well, where certainly with the Qi aspect to it, this is something that I found, like, I can only talk personally for me. When I first started out, I could only really work with very moderate to mild, shall we say, conditions if we had to put a sort of gradation on them. So probably musculoskeletal, bad back, I don't know, tennis elbow, whatever, something like that. Very sort of physical things. Mm. And then what I would encounter when I was training more was that many conditions or syndromes or illnesses people had were too complicated for me. I couldn't touch them. So this was too hard. This is too difficult. I can't do it. No change is coming. And then gradually, as I developed my practice, then as I developed more inner skill, I developed more Qi, for want of a better term, and I developed more cultivation mentally, then actually more of those kind of conditions became accessible to me to treat. And then it's almost like the illnesses or the complexity of what you treat kind of force you on a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like they pull your boundaries on a little bit, force you to get better. And that means you have to become more cultivated, ultimately. I think that you get a sharp slap in the face when you think you're doing all right, and then you go to treat someone and you can't help them at all. Just as a reminder to keep you humble, I think.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It happens all the time. I can think of cases where I really thought I understood what was going on, or maybe someone's starting to get better. I'm like, look at me. I got this. And then it goes sideways.
Yep, I know the feeling.
I think we all do.
Yeah, totally.
So let's talk how to go about developing this kind of discernment.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, for me, that does become the basis for meditation, really, as much as anything, isn't it? I mean, one thing that should arise from correct meditation practice, shall we say, that's horribly judgmental, isn't it? From most meditation practice, there's probably systems that are an exception, isn't there? But assuming the majority, one thing that should arise is clarity. You should be able to discern between that which is valuable and that which is not, meaning that your attention shouldn't be drawn willy-nilly towards those things that aren't worth your focus. I would say that that's a large part of what should happen with meditation, certainly with regards to your mind and how it interacts with things. And I think after that, very much structured thought arises. And I think structured thought is quite rare these days. And I think the more structured your thought is, I think a higher degree of clarity arises anyway. So that should help with practice.
What do you mean by structured thought?
That one's a phrase that I use quite a lot that confuses people. It's like this, right? Well, think of it like the spleen. I would say when the spleen is out of whack, that's really unstructured thought. That would be the basis for how I see it. So structured thought to me is very much based upon causation. So this happens, which is likely to lead to this, which is likely to lead to this, likely to lead to this. That's what I would consider structured thought. Quite linear in a weird way. But unstructured thought is A leads to B, which could lead to C, which may be D. And that reminds me a little bit of E. And 3 years ago, somebody said something that was a bit like B, and you're lost, and you're off on a tangent. Reminds me of like the grandpa from The Simpsons, when he sort of goes off on a random topic or something like that. And I think a lot of, I can speak for myself, if I'm not focused very much on cultivation, or my practice isn't going so well, or, you have up and down periods, then I'm more in that way of thinking. And I think that structured thought is a bigger deal. It's rarer than we might like to think in modern society. And I think that as a therapist, we need that. And I think a lot of clarity comes from that, whether you're looking inside yourself or you're looking at the patient as well. I mean, I run a college of Chinese medicine these days, and I would say that, my students will hate me. They've got an exam next week as well, so this will stress them out if it is for that. But what I can see the difference is structured thought and disordered thought, especially during the diagnostic process, makes a massive difference in whether the people can clearly ascertain what is correct or what is relevant, I would say, and what is not.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code QIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. I think that's so much the practice of medicine.
Completely.
Is this thing relevant? Is it not relevant? Exactly. So I want to hang with this structured thought for a moment, which, if I'm following you correctly, it comes from a kind of cultivation and sense of discernment. You need the discernment before you get that structured thought. Is that correct?
I think so. And I think I might also add to that definition that it's based upon causation. I think unstructured thought is not based upon a chain of causation, where structured thought would be my personal definition of it as well.
But wouldn't unstructured thought, at least to the person having it,
Mm-hmm.
seem like causation?
Oh, yeah, completely. But that's where their lack of discernment comes in. They can't see that it's not based on causation. It's based upon what? Reactivity, bias, preference, emotional attachment, projection, reflect, all of these different things, rather than being based on literally what is going to lead on to the next thing.
Actual causation.
Yeah, actual causation, which isn't that the basis of medicine? This led to this, which led to this, which led to this, which I've got to get involved in that and change that. And I think you need to be quite clear and linear and causation-based in your thinking to be effective as a practitioner of medicine.
Okay, this is great. I love hearing you say this because I think many of our colleagues would say we're holistic nonlinear.
Oh, yeah. That's where I disagree. Yeah, I don't agree. I think there is, of course, a place for, I'm thinking of a couple of practitioners I know who are exceptional practitioners who have far more circular and creative artistic thought than I do. It's far more, mine's like a straight line, theirs is a bit more circular, and it works for them. But can I be mean? I don't want to be mean.
Well, no, you don't need to be mean, but you can certainly be straightforward.
I'll be straightforward, yeah. Not mean, but people would take it as that if I'm not careful with my wording. I think that it's rarer for somebody to be an effective practitioner, careful as I can, in that way of thinking than it is with linear constructive or linear causation-based thought, because otherwise what they tend to do is start getting to a stage where they intuit things or they feel things, or I had a sense that I should needle here or something, which I think is starting to get a little bit risky with medicine. That's why I'm a little bit cautious of that kind of thought, generally, certainly when I'm teaching people.
Yes.
But they also tell me I'm a heathen, so they might be right.
Maybe something to be proud of. Who knows? So when I first went to study Chinese medicine, I was curious about it. I was really skeptical about it. I'm like, what the hell? And I knew that it worked because I had had it, and there were major things that had changed in my life as a result. And I was curious. I was not at all sure about it. And I gave myself permission at any moment to leave school and go, yeah, no, this is crazy town. I'm not doing this. And so there's always been this skeptical part of me it's like, am I really following this? Am I really being helpful? Or am I making this up? And am I making it up in a convincing enough way that maybe it's actually helpful for other people? So there's that piece. I just want to put a couple like rocks in the stream here and then see if we can walk across them.
Okay.
And then the other one, in Damo, I deal with this all the time, and I don't know about other people, but I deal with this all the time in my work. I hear the term intention. It's like, well, I'm using my intention, or intention is a very important piece of my practice. And for the longest time, I'd kind of shake my head like, oh yeah, intention, yeah, really important. And as time goes on, I'm like, intention, okay, what are we actually talking about? And what's actually going on here? How much is imagination and how much is that causative discernment that you were talking about?
Yeah, I can flip that on its head, because one of the first things I teach to anybody, and that's in alchemy, Neigong, Chinese medicine, Tai Chi, doesn't matter what it is, any of these arts coming from this, if it's based on cultivation or coming from a cultivation background such as Daoism or Buddhism or whatever, there should be no intention. So I don't allow people to use the intention within their practice particularly, certainly not at the treatment phase of what they're doing. We actually work on stepping away from it, because intention is, to me, actually anti-Taoist, if you like. It's the antithesis to what Daoism is really about, because Daoism really is about attention, not intention. And to me, the distinction between those two is the basis for going into the deeper levels of cultivation and the deeper levels of practice. Certainly with the teachers I have now, there's one in particular I can think of. If I were to say the word intention, it's equivalent of having to put $1 in the swear jar or something afterwards. They're going to clip around the back of the head or something. because it would definitely be negative to what we're doing. But there's a huge power in skillfully applied attention that takes a long time. I think these days I'm just about getting it, maybe. Like, I don't know, stepping on the fringe, the boundary of being able to apply attention. It's taken me about, been focused on it for the last decade, at least, to try to refine that quality, and it's quite tricky. So I don't know if this is too abstract, maybe not, but I would say that Qi does not follow intention at all, but Qi does follow attention. And that's the key difference. And that's why a lot of people have difficulty adding that dimension into their treatments, into their practice. And now I've completely forgotten what your question was. Attention, how much is intention? How much is imagination? I got you.
Right. We're talking about imagination, which intuition kind of rides along with that.
Yeah.
Intention, imagination, and attention. It's slippery.
Well, if attention is applied to something, I mean, the basis of Daoism would be, one of paraphrase the Tao Te Ching really horribly, but essentially that human beings follow earth, which follows heaven, which follows nature, follows Tao, right? Zoran. I'm sure someone can quote that a lot better than me. But the basis for how that would be applied to cultivation would be that the human being, which is essentially our connection to who we are, our identification, must follow the basis of physicality, which is earth, the body, form, which then must follow essentially the rules of heaven, which means consciousness or deeper awareness, which then leads to Zoran, which doesn't mean nature, as it's often translated to me, at least. What it means is natural self-regulation, which is the result of such things. So if we break that down, what it means is that I'm trying to take intention and imagination and movement of mind out of the way, so that all that's left is stabilized attention, and then whatever my attention is applied to will self-regulate and fix itself. Essentially, it will return back to the source. It will self-regulate. So even say, putting a needle in. Say I'm putting a needle in, whatever, stomach 36, something like that, whatever. If I'm inserting the needle into a point like that, then if I'm applying intention, I'm in the way of any result. Like if there's an action in my mind, it's not going to help. If I apply attention and I'm attentively absorbed into that process, then depending on also another aspect of the training, how much Qi has been developed, which to me is a whole other sort of ingredient here, that will start to connect into that point and then lead to self-regulation, meaning that the body has the space to fix itself or repair itself or return to neutral, return to balance. That would be how I would apply meditative skills and energetics and Daoism into something like needle in stomach 36.
So if you have an idea in your mind, that could very easily get in the way of what's actually right in front of you, that had you been attending to it, might have been helpful to that patient in that moment in the work that you were doing.
Yes. My basic rule that I apply to me is anytime I get involved, I mess it up. And my life has proved that over and over again consistently. So therefore, I try to take myself out of the way at every opportunity because I'm useless. But my attention's not bad.
Oh, we're on different sides of the ocean, but like high five, brother. Anytime I try to do something, I kind of screw it up. Yeah, often. Okay, so, and fair enough. So how do we come at it then? Because people are coming into our offices looking for help, and the tacit agreement with medicine is I am going to help you.
Sure. Okay. So when I'm saying intention, I mean a different kind of thing, I suppose. There would always be the background subconscious intention that I'm here to help that person. That would be my aim. But I'm taking that as a given and I'm just allowing that to be there in the background. Same as if I've done the diagnosis and I've decided, okay, whatever, liver Qi is stagnant or whatever. There's that intention that has to change. But then during the actual interaction with the patient, that all has to go. I can let that all go. And it becomes an automatic. It's like my body subconsciously has the intention to breathe, I would assume. I don't need to be too involved. I'm hoping it's going to continue doing that. So I kind of allow those intentions, if you get what I mean, to fade away into the background so that while I'm doing the treatment itself, because I want my Qi involved, that is the basis of it. I want my Qi involved in the treatment. That means I have to get out of the way. Because the biggest error in Qigong and Chinese medicine is the Yi does not lead the Qi.
The Yi does not lead the Qi.
No, which is obviously a very common phrase, right, in sort of Chinese arts or or anything like that.
Well, and also you were talking about this kind of, I'm forgetting the phrase, like structured attention.
Yes.
And that makes me think about the E. Is that connected to the E, or is that something that the E that's foreign to the E?
I think E is, obviously the definition of the term can really vary, can't it? Anything from awareness and movement of mind through to any function of the mind, really. Depends how you're using that term, I suppose. I would say that if we're attentive, purely attentive, stabilized, then the E is more settled. I would say it's more balanced. And I think that is going to be more efficient for practice. Certainly the rule of Ziran and Wu Wei are applied more at that stage with regards to the treatment. And going back to that phrase, the E leads the Qi, is, I think more accurately what we can say is the quality of the Yi leads to a quality of the Qi rather than an action of the Yi. And that's what I'm getting to. So say, I don't know, put my mind, whatever, on my finger, doesn't mean the Qi is going to move through my finger. What it does mean is I'll feel the nerves there a little bit because I'm paying attention to it, but it's not really going to mobilize the Qi to any large degree because it's the action of my Yi. It's trying to do something. It's like a forced intent. Whereas if the quality of the Yi, if we want to link the two, is stabilized and attentive, then the result is that the Qi will move to that area, is how I see it.
And that's coming through attention, not intention.
Yep, absolutely, 100%. If you take the rules of, say, Tai Chi or Qigong, okay, let's stick with Tai Chi because people have different views on Qigong. But for example, Tai Chi, one of the key rules is obviously listening, what they call Ting or Tingjin, which means to essentially apply stabilized attention into an object, much like meditation, which is why the two arts help each other a little bit. And I just think it's the same for Chinese medicine, that I'm trying to apply this listening, this attentiveness into what I'm doing, and that's when the results apply. It's like for myself, any minor advancements I've had in my Chinese medicine practice have come from increasingly getting rid of my intention and my desire for a result and to simply pay attention to what I'm doing. And that is what has helped me to progress. And every time I think, no, right, damn it, I'm going to tell it what to do, no, it all goes wrong.
This is such a sticky wicket here. We all want to do good work.
That's a very English term.
Well, maybe am I even using it correctly? It's one of those terms I hear.
You are. I thought you were making me feel home with my Britishness.
A sticky wicket is like something that's difficult to pass through. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Just want to make sure that I actually know what I'm talking about. This getting out of the way so that our attention can flourish and kind of guide us. That makes a kind of sense to me. I don't really have the words to put to it other than that makes sense. It's like being in clinic and being less encumbered with a patient's story. Sometimes there's like a moment of clarity where it's like, oh, I wonder if this is kind of, like the pee under the mattress of the princess that's bothering her so she can't sleep. There are things that you don't think them. They kind of come into awareness in a way. For me, they get my attention. Like, okay, look here, like an X on a treasure map. Like, okay, dig here, see what you find.
I would even take that a step further, if I may. And I would say that like the princess and the pea, but sometimes you don't even have to find the pea. Like even the very act of having the attention in the right place leads to change. So even if you don't know why, maybe if you don't know why, or here's another thing, maybe sometimes people are over-obsessed with finding the root cause. Maybe you just have to find the root that creates the change and the cause doesn't matter all that much. Maybe that's, if the end result is treatment, who really cares what the root cause was? And attention, often if applied in that way, can lead to that kind of change, I think. So if I could give an example, if you don't mind, say I have somebody who comes into a Qigong class, right? And they're just going to just sit and pay attention to the body, nothing else, nothing at all. Just sit and pay attention to the body. Now, what will happen is when people put the mind inside, invariably, some of those people will feel terrible. They'll feel horrible. As soon as they put the mind inside, their body will feel horrible. It's just like, you can even see it. It's like contorted and tight and sort of all tied up. And what they're feeling essentially is the quality of their mind. That's it. It's just usually they're not feeling the quality of their mind because their mind is outside on TV or the telephone, or when they're asleep, it's dreaming, or they haven't put their mind in their body before. And then when they put the mind in the body, they're like, oh my God, I'm horrible. I didn't know I was so deviant, or I didn't know I was so messed up. And the body shows them. And I think that actually is the root for lots of what we call internally originating disease, right? It's the mind and the body interacting, and our emotional state creates whatever, hypochondriac pain or however we want to list it. And then what will happen is then when people put the mind inside the body and we gradually train the mind to like, step back, it's okay, relax, take that intention out the way, just listen, don't worry, don't judge, just listen. Gradually what happens is their body starts to feel the opposite. It feels better. It starts to change. It opens up. Their skeleton sticks itself up. Joints open up. The flesh starts to relax and stretch. And even sometimes then illnesses will start to go away. They'll literally start to fade. This old ailment they've had for 20 years will start to disappear and blah, blah, blah. And all that's happening is now they're putting a healthier or less involved version of themselves into their body, because they're not intending, they're not trying to do anything, they're not carrying all of their trauma, they're not carrying their rage, they're not carrying their anger, they're setting that aside and having a neutral mind inside the body. And the result of this is they are now wu wei, none governing, none regulating, none doing. And then zuran will start to arise, which is self-regulation, because if I give my attention to something, it will grow in the right direction. I take that on faith. That's what I believe. And I think essentially with Chinese medicine, often we're doing that too. So if I connect with a patient with needles, with Qigong or whatever, or even just my presence of being in the space with them, sometimes what will happen is my attention is strong enough that it will neutralize the effect in the body, lead the qi, and then it will start to create change. And then I assist that with the needles. Sometimes it's not strong enough. And then sometimes my attention is strong enough that their attention starts to copy, if you get what I mean. It's like,
yes,
it starts to join in with yours, and then their intention disappears. And you see it. It's like, oh, for want of a better word, your personality is gone temporarily. You are neutralized, you are equanimous, and then your body starts to change, and then the healing starts to take place. And I think that becomes the basis for the psychological side of cultivation, is how well can I take myself to equanimity, attention, so that they copy. Because if I can't find attention, they're downfall not going to. Definitely not. Because in that situation, I'm the one that has power. They're laying half-dressed on a massage table. They're definitely disempowered in my clinic space. So therefore, I'm taking the lead. So I need to be in a good enough state for them to follow.
yes, absolutely. And even just that you're the, like air quotes here, doctor, practitioner, whatever you want to call yourself,
Yeah.
and they're coming for help. Again, there's a bit of a power dynamic there, but it's not a but, it's an and. And then I think there's also, again, working hypothesis on my side, humans together in the same space, the way our nervous systems interact with each other. Very, very interesting.
Oh, yeah, completely. Yeah.
I have found, again, I think it's true. I work with it all the time in clinic. If I can be settled and have my nervous system a bit calmer, it invites the other person to settle as well.
Yeah, completely. I don't know if you know of this. There's a lady named Cindy Engel, who's a shiatsu therapist, very good one, friend of mine, who basically has studied that phenomena extensively. That's like the basis of what she does, somatic empathy. And yeah, I think it's major for treatments.
Somatic empathy. I've not heard those two words put together like that. So thank you. And it totally makes sense.
Yeah, she'd be worth speaking to, actually. If you get a chance, try and speak to Cindy. She's a very, very interesting woman, good friend of mine, been friends for years. And I'm going to paraphrase what she teaches and get it wrong, but in her opinion, it's how, like animals communicate, isn't it? Two dogs meet each other after the butt sniffing has taken place and all that kind of stuff. There's another side to it where the dogs will know what the other dog is feeling, primarily because one dog's nervous system will copy the other dog's nervous system. It's like two tuning forks kind of meeting in the middle or something. They'll learn about each other in that way. And we still have that inside of us a little bit. So that's where a lot of our ability to pick up things from somebody else, we might say psychically or whatever, comes because our nervous system will copy their nervous system so that we actually start to feel what they feel. And I think that mechanism plays a massive part in Chinese medicine with regard to your kind of presence as a therapist.
I suspect it does. Well, I think probably in any healing.
Yeah, I think so.
It's probably an essential ingredient.
Except for those ones where they put gloves on and then set fire and slap you with fire that they do in Indonesia. I'm not sure about that. But all the other ones.
I don't know about that one.
Horrendous. It's horrendous.
I want to cycle back here for a moment you had used the term developing Qi. And we often talk about this thing of cultivating or developing Qi.
Hmm.
And it's kind of a basic idea, I think, in our profession, something that we want to do.
Yep.
And again, I've been at it long enough to be able to ask myself the question, well, what the hell is that actually? Like, what does that mean? It sounds really nice. It's like putting a needle in a point going, well, what am I doing? Well, I'm moving the chi. Okay, fair enough. What does that mean?
Okay, well, there's a big topic. I think with regards to Qi, this is my opinion on Qi, is that I think that there's different forms of, obviously, but different from Chinese medicine classification. I would call the first kind of Qi health Qi, if you like, would be my overall definition of it.
Like what we'd call Zheng Qi?
Not even that specific. Like, let's just separate it completely from any Chinese medicine term. Let's just call it the Qi of health, meaning that the functional activities of your bodies and your cells and all of those kind of things. So everybody is born with what, like a maximum capacity for health Qi? And I don't think we're all given the same. Some people are born, obviously, with a very good constitution and super awesome. And some people a little bit more frail, and we have to play with the cards we're dealt. It's that kind of thing. And I think that when you work with that level of Qi, you can only kind of hit your maximum level, what you had potential for when you were born, and you can't really go beyond it if you want. And that's really then where cultivation comes in, because cultivation and the Qi that I believe that people should try to develop from something like Qigong or Neigong would be to go beyond that capacity, okay? Further than that, like go beyond what you were born with, what was your innate potential. And then only when you start to hit those levels is really, I think, you can understand what Qi is, and to realize that it is far, far more literal and real than people think. It's not air, it's not breath, it's not blood, it's not the nerves. It is a very specific substance that is very difficult to cultivate. It is very, very difficult to cultivate that energy above your innate level. And for me, it's been a large part of my fascination with regards to Chinese medicine as a practitioner, how to cultivate it, because the patient doesn't really need it. Not really, they just need their health Qi to be good, using that sort of generic term. But the cultivator needs a lot, and the practitioner needs a lot. So I would divide that kind of Qi into two sorts, yin and yang Qi. Yang Qi is largely electrical in quality, and it moves in linear patterns. It generates life and movement, stimulates the nervous system, excites the body, moves things like that. And then you have yin Qi, which is more magnetic, which generates form and guidance and fields and directs that electrical Qi through the body. So a lot of what we're trying to do in, say, Neigong or Qigong really, is to cultivate those two forms of Qi, yin and yang Qi, to higher and higher levels until they can start to affect, sticking with medicine, they can affect the patient's system to a far higher degree. The key to it is the dantian. You need the damn dantian, that because nobody has one when you're born, and you've got to cultivate it. And once that is there, then it's possible to lift those levels up. So once you have a lot of it that you can use, then you can take that idea of affecting the patient's body to a kind of higher level. Because, for example, if I can generate more of an electrical or yang qi resonance around my body or through the needle, it will affect their yang qi to a higher degree. So therefore, their nerves are going to react a lot quicker to what I'm doing. And if I can develop the magnetic qi, the yin qi, to a higher degree, I can actually start to move other substances through the body, and things like moving their blood, moving stasis through the system, or even rearranging tissues, and things like that that go above and beyond what you can do without that substance. So I think qi cultivation should be a prime consideration alongside mental development for almost all practitioners of Chinese medicine, personally. But it's difficult. It's not easy. Because it always wants to leak, Michael. Why does it always want to leak? I don't know, but it always does. So keeping the stuff is tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital qi, and that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing is an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
What are the common ways that we leak it? I mean, sometimes you could certainly cultivate something, make more of something. But if you can just plug the holes and let whatever is innate like accumulate a bit, that's also, I would suspect, very helpful. What are some ways that we could plug up our leaky system?
Well, for a patient, I guess, then a lot of the leakage is going to come through inefficient use of the body and inefficient use of the mind. There's all of that. But for a cultivator and a Neigong practitioner, the leakages are really literal. Actually, a part of the process is generally the teacher would seal the leakages in your body, which means they actually locate on your system. Most people have about 2 or 3 leaky points, if you want, on your system, which need plugging. It's far more esoteric than people would realize, maybe. It's not something physical. They actually have to reach in and seal a point on the body, which is very painful, actually. It's very uncomfortable when they seal the blockage to prevent the qi from leaking out of the system. But I've never really heard a satisfactory explanation for why that qi leaks, to be perfectly honest, or why from that point. Like, I've heard lots of explanations that don't make sense to me, but I'm not happy with those. I'm not happy with those explanations. To me, it's still in the realm of randomness.
So you need a teacher to help you? You need somebody to help you do this? Or is this something that we can cultivate our way into?
Well, I'm at the stage I can do some of it, but I have people better than me that can do the whole thing, yeah. Yeah, generally, you would need a teacher, you would need a system for that kind of thing. Yes. And it used to be there was a lot more shrouded in sort of and hidden, but it is more possible to find a teacher these days. It's coming out more into the open. But qi cultivation, like the building of qi, is huge. It's absolutely huge. And the beauty of using it with acupuncture as well is, I don't know if that was the original aim. I'm assuming not. It would seem a little bit too much of a sort of handy coincidence. But I mean, a small metal needle inserted into the body is very, very useful for transferring qi from one person to the other. For sure. Like, so if I do a treatment, for example, because I'm aware that lots of people listening to this will think qi is either something that is metaphorical or not real, or an archaic model for lymphatic flow or the nervous system or something like that. But it's not. It's more complicated. If I would say I insert a needle into someone's, I don't know, back of their leg or something like this, and then I just put the needle in, or I tonify the needle, what are they going to get? Qi sensation, meaning that essentially they feel that whatever, that sensation radiating along the channel or within that region of the body, right? And often, I think what they're feeling is a pull along the sort of sinew channel depth, to be totally honest, that they're feeling. But if you inject qi in through that needle, from your body, from your dantian into theirs, then the result is different, because they can either receive a sharp, sudden shock into the body that can be uncomfortable, or it can stimulate the body so it starts thrashing around and moving against its will, which is essentially because the nerve is hyperstimulated by the yang qi, so the muscles switch on and off, almost like ABS, the anti-slip brakes on the ice or something like that. And all of these weird kind of effects will take place on the patient, which sometimes people will stumble across anyway. I'm sure most acupuncturists have needled somebody and then someone started twitching, and at some point they've not known what's going on. But you can take that process and heighten it and learn to inject more of your energy into the patient to create stronger results. For me, that's what makes Chinese medicine interesting. Otherwise, I'd have got bored of it years ago. I think it's a fascinating part of it. So I'm not a natural therapist, I'll be honest. I have no bedside manner. I think there's many people with a far better psyche for Chinese medicine than I have. So I have to find it fascinating to keep doing it.
Yeah, we all have whatever it is that draws us into it. That's for sure. Okay, there's a lot there. I want to unpack a little bit of this. The idea of fa qi, the idea of taking your qi and putting it into someone else, I always get super nervous when I hear people talk about that.
I agree with you, actually. But why? Why? I'm curious on your reason.
So I'm nervous about it because, again, I've got a very active imagination and I like my imagination. Okay. So I'm back to this thing where we were talking about attention as opposed to intention,
Mhm.
imagination and wishful thinking. Like, okay, I got me some chi and I'm going to like lay it on you. Well, what if I'm like really deluded?
Yes.
Or what if I'm super nervous and like, oh my God, I'm going to make up a big fireball of chi and like give it to the patient because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I hope it helps. I'm going to lay some chi on them. I worry about that, right? On one side, if I'm unclear and I'm projecting that unclarity into a patient, I don't think that's going to go so well. So that's one piece. The second piece is I came to Chinese medicine because I have bad lungs. I've had respiratory issues my entire life. And so, at a very basic level, I don't want to be giving away stuff that I kind of need for myself. Like, if my bank account isn't good, I'm not going to be able to be generous with others. And so, that cultivation piece makes a lot of sense to me because, man, I could use a little extra chi for my poor old lungs. So, I worry about depleting myself. So, one side is I'm using my delusion in an attempt to help somebody with my wishful thinking and active imagination. And the other is I'm going to deplete myself and hurt myself and not help anybody.
Yep. I get it. Okay, so there's a couple of things there. First of all, there's different types of effects that people will call qi, right? So the first one would be if somebody just, I don't know, takes their hand and moves it across your face and it makes a tingling sensation, or up and down your arms, because we've got a slight bioelectric field around the body or whatever it is. I don't know anything about science, but you've got something like that, right, that stimulates things. I wouldn't consider that qi. I would consider that a natural function of the body, or maybe not a cultivated form of qi. And I think that a lot of people, when they do off-the-body work and things, I think sometimes they've managed to heighten that field a little bit so they get a slightly more magnetic effect on the patient than they did before. And I think a lot of energy healing would be based on that, combined with wishful thinking, to be perfectly honest, in a lot of cases. But there is that kind of qi, that kind of thing. And to me, that is still not fa qi. Something's not coming out of you. That's just a natural, whatever, like a natural thing that's around your body. To fa qi, to get the qi out, is very, very difficult. It's very, very hard. It doesn't want to come out of your body. So you can't really accidentally fa qi. It would be very hard. The training for it is extensive. It's difficult. A lot of people never manage it. You need assistance the first few times you get the fa qi out to get it out to a high level. So people aren't going to accidentally do it. But there's a couple of things to be aware of, is that when it does come out, it takes from you, yes. So your caution around pushing it out and weakening yourself is true. Yeah, that is possible. There have been doctors who could issue fa qi who died very young because of issuing too much of it. Like, it can come out of the body. It's not good for you. It can cause a stroke and a heart attack and things like this when that energy comes out. So it's quite a heavy-ended thing. You can't accidentally do it. The other side to it is, before you get to that stage, this might sound a bit woo-woo, but before you can even get the qi out, for some reason, what's easy to get out, I suppose not for some reason, you can see why, is pathogens are easier to get out than qi. So xie qi, or sick qi, is much easier to get out of your body than healthy qi. So what will happen to the person who's kind of trying it, giving it a go, is quite often they can purge their pathogen into the patient's body. Just like, if you needle, the 8 winds or something like that, or maybe you open a channel and all of a sudden people get blotchy and horrible on their hands and it just feels disgusting, that sort of clearing out. That kind of qi is easy to push from you into the patient. So if someone's nice and strong, it's not going to make much difference. But if somebody's quite frail, that's not great. That's not an awesome result. So generally, with regards to qi cultivation, the process is the same. Is first of all, we open the body, open the channels, and build the dantian, consolidate it so it exists, because it doesn't exist naturally. As I said, we have to build it. Then after that, we clear the body out to get pathogens out of the body as best we can. There's always going to be You're going to take some on, aren't you? But we need to clear out the debris as best we can, which is where Daoyin come in primarily. And then after that, there's a process of building. So you have to build up your reserves, build it. Tons and tons and tons of qi. That training is so excessive with the amount of time. I think you have to have a healthy level of insanity to even go through the hours required to build the body up with qi. So I think for most people, they're not really going to be interested in that amount of time. So I guess what I'm getting at is it's going to exclude people from being in the really risky category anyway, to be perfectly honest, because they're not going to build enough to get it out.
All right. So that's a helpful distinction. And that idea that we've got this kind of piezoelectric energy field around us, and some people more in touch with it than others, or maybe able to play with it more than others and do things with it, party tricks. It's where their attention is. So, of course, there's going to be more of something to work with there, and not conflating that with like Fa Qi, which is a whole different thing. So that's helpful.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. Now, I'm just a practitioner of Chinese medicine. And I suspect many people listening to this, that's our main gig, right? We're acupuncturists, we're Chinese medicine practitioners. We want to be healthy. We want to help people. I don't know if we want to go through everything it takes to get to a super high level of cultivation. Because I don't know about other people listening, but I've got like a lot of other things I want to do with my life.
Yes, you've got one of those life things. It gets in the way.
Yes, those life things. So I tend to be kind of a practical person. I live in the American Midwest. We're like super practical people. We're on the vulgar side. We're just very practical. So hearing that the Dantian, and of course I've heard about the Dantian because we all hear about that in Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing you say, well, it's not there, you need to cultivate it. And it's really the first, like one of the first steps of getting to somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan, Damo, of good enough.
Okay, yep.
I really am. Like, can I cultivate just enough Dantian? Can I cultivate just enough Qi that, for the most part, I can be healthy, I can help others, and like get on with my life? Because I do have a bit of a meditation practice. I don't want to sit in meditation however many hours a day. I want to do like just enough. So could you speak to becoming a cultivated enough?
Your life is in the way, Michael. Get rid of it. Get rid of that life, Michael. That's the only way.
Well, then why bother with having a life?
No, it's not true. I'm just being horrible. Yeah, I mean, with regards to Fa Qi, the sort of really heavy.
Well, actually, I want to step away from Fa Qi for a moment. What I want to step into is basic things we could do to cultivate our Dantian just enough. What can we do to cultivate our Qi just enough so we can just live as regular people?
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, if we step away from Fa Qi, we don't need that level, that high end of it.
We don't need that. No lightning bolts.
The Dantian, no, can be cultivated in a fairly short space of time. Certainly to consolidate it can be done in a few weeks, probably. Something like that, of hour a day. A couple of hours a day for a few weeks, I would say realistically consolidates the outer field of the Dantian. And then after that, filling it. And if people have a regular practice of, 45 minutes, an hour a day, several times a week, that will fill up the Dantian rather nicely. Not enough to sort of create those crazy effects that you see the kind of grand masters have. But if that's not what you're after, if you want health, charge up the battery, a higher degree of connection between you and the patient, a higher degree of connection between you and the needle, I think a practice a few times a week, hour at a time, I think that's enough. That's what most people I teach, that's what they do.
It sounds tremendously doable.
Yeah, it's just us mentally ill people that take it further. But I think for the majority of people that have other things going on in their life, I think that's very sensible, yeah. I think that most acupuncturists would benefit from consolidating the Dantian to that level, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You've got some resources online for doing this, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I started teaching online just before COVID, actually. Just before all that, which was strange timing, as these things often go. I do, yeah, but I prefer teaching in person. But it's not that difficult to consolidate the Dantian to that level. Not really, not that tricky. I think that what is important as well is the mental quality. I think that's often what people miss as well. It doesn't matter if you have the best Neigong or Qigong technique to do it, but your mental quality must be good as well in order for the Qi to consolidate. And if the mental quality is good, you can do it faster.
What makes for good mental quality?
Attention.
Oh, we're back to that.
Always. Everything in Daoism comes back to that, back to attentiveness. I believe that's why Daoism never had any major focus on a creator god or anything like this, because the very idea of such a thing creates an image or an intention somewhere within the subconscious. So anything that is born from a connection to that tradition must come back to attention, stabilized attention.
This is sounding a little tricky. When I first started meditating,
Mm-hmm.
the instruction I had was, well, pay attention to your breath. You can feel it going in and out of your nose. It's a way to pay attention. And then, a lot of it was learning to take my focus to something specific. But that seems to be different from what you're talking about with attention.
Yeah, because, with regards to Chinese medicine, I'm not after necessarily stabilizing onto an object to the exclusion of everything that's not that object. Am I? Not really. I want a more connected absorption into the entire of the patient or the process is more what I'm after, like a peripheral awareness that's not there in many meditative techniques. I'd be very surprised if you, halfway through an acupuncture treatment, entered into a jhanic state. That would seem strange. The causative things aren't in place for that meditative quality to arise. But it's probably more akin to what people would call mindfulness or something, or the traditional version of mindfulness, not the modern version of the definition. But it would be something more akin to that I'm after. I want my object to be full of mind, state of attentiveness.
Okay, that sounds interesting and a little confusing.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure why. Just that we're having this conversation, I'm listening to you. The question, Damo, is like how to get a handle on attention.
All right. That's like the basis for many cultivation practitioners' work for years and years and years, isn't it? To increasingly step back with the strength of all the things that we subconsciously and unconsciously carry through as kind of hidden intention is very, very tricky. Yeah. So generally it involves, different traditions will have different ways, but Daoism is often to either release the weight of the mind, weight being a funny word, so that it almost sinks through into the body. So that the analogy that I would use that's not traditional is it's like water soaking into a sponge. And I have to get the water, the fluid of my attentiveness, to soak through the sponge of the body until it becomes sodden or heavier with the weight of your attentiveness. And we do lots and lots of work with that. And then gradually we realize that as we step back with our intention, that water soaks more and more and more and more into the body. Till eventually the two become linked, and then you are full of mind or full of awareness. So it's a little bit of a shorthand version, but that's the basis of what we're trying to do. But yeah, it's very, very tricky. No, it's not tricky. That's not true. Okay. It's just long-winded. It's just long-winded. As all these things always are, aren't they? Well, Chinese medicines are not difficult. It's just really long-winded, isn't it? There's just lots of it.
I'm going to take that as a point of inquiry. I'll get back with you on that.
It's like this as well. Like, if I can just throw a strange idea to you out, the better your cultivation, in my opinion, the worse you can be at Chinese medicine and get away with it. That's how I see it.
The better your cultivation, the worse you can be at Chinese medicine and get away with it.
That's how I see it. For example, people that I teach in the college, often I'm actually about 50% of the people are people retraining in Chinese medicine. They're already practitioners and they come and they want to start again. I don't know why they want to put up with me for a couple of years, but they come and they learn. And many of them have far more Chinese medicine knowledge than me. They've studied 5 or 6 systems. They know all the stems and branches. They can identify the biao, the 8 bridge, like all these complicated, very, very complicated theories that they know intimately. They can name every point's historical basis and how it came from there and all of its different, all of this knowledge, this incredible knowledge that I'm far too thick to have access to myself. But I get better results quite often. And the reason is because the amount of cultivation and attentiveness of qi, even to the moderate level that I've managed to develop, means that I don't require any of those theories. Actually, my treatments can be very, very simple. And I can use a very, very simple repertoire because the nature of the qi and the attentiveness and the shen, if you want, does the work for me. I still have a paradigm I work to, but it's probably more akin to what people would call Bob standard Chinese medicine. I went all out into all the weird theories, and I came right back to simply understanding how to anchor the lung qi down to the kidneys and that kind of basic knowledge. But because of the cultivation, it works well. But if I don't have a lot of qi and I don't have a lot of attentiveness and I don't have a lot of connection to the patient, I probably have to rely on very complex, convoluted theories and all these little nuances with the needles or even with the herbs to modify and adjust and all of these things. But do you see what I mean? Like, it's a scale. It's like the intellectual complexity, or do we just have a very sound theoretical basis and a lot of cultivation? And that to me would be the crux of why it's really important and why the masters, which I'm not including myself in that, definitely not, still a moron, but the masters are able to increasingly simplify what they're doing, right? Simplify down to one needle. Isn't that the story? Just put that needle in. I bet if I put that needle in, it wouldn't work.
Yes. So when I first graduated from Chinese medicine school, I had a raw herbal pharmacy with a little over 100 herbs. And I thought, man, when I get really good, I'm going to have a pharmacy with 300. I'm not saying I'm great, but I can tell you my pharmacy is smaller.
Good. Yep, that's a sign of expertise for sure. Absolutely.
Well, I remember getting some books when I was in China. There'd be a book on like Buzhong Yiqi Tang.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like how to use Buzhong Yiqi Tang to treat 185 different issues. Right? Because if you really understand Buzhong Yiqi Tang, then you can apply it in all kinds of different ways. Sounds a little bit like that.
Yeah. Ultimately, all Chinese medicine, in my opinion, can be reduced down to probably not quite yin and yang, but I think the 8 principles. And I think if you understand the 8 principles for most patients' conditions or treatment, then if you're good enough for what you're doing, you can work with that model pretty damn well. And then everything else is just a flavor added on top, personally, I think. Or I'm trying. I don't get it right, Michael, but I'm doing my best.
Well, you're a vulgar moron, so you're doing the best you can.
Can only work with what we've got.
Vulgar moron medicine. What kind of acupuncture do you practice? Oh, I'm a vulgar moron acupuncturist.
At least it's honest.
I really appreciate this sense. I'm just sitting here kind of playing with it in my own body at the moment of allowing the attention to soak into the body.
Yeah, it's major. It's major. If there was one thing I wish the whole world could do, it'd be that.
It's an interesting feeling. I don't want to say too much about it because I'm just starting to play with this idea. I'll have to see how it shows up on the cushion as well. Like soaking the attention into the tissues. You know, you were talking earlier about when people take their mind and put it in their body, and sometimes it's like really uncomfortable. And I've had this experience in clinic, and I think everybody's had this experience where you put a few needles in, a few well-placed needles, and the patient begins to settle. Their mind kind of comes into their body, and they're like, why is my shoulder so tight?
Yes.
The needle didn't make their shoulder tight, but their awareness has shifted in a way that they realize, my shoulder's tight, and I don't know how long it's been tight for. That's just my tensegrity.
Mm-hmm.
And once that awareness comes in, the awareness alone begins to soften it and change it.
Yeah.
Or at least it can.
Well, I mean, the traditional word they would use is to maintain equanimity, right? Dare I say attentiveness, but almost a little indifference to the outcome of that attention, because that's what enables it to change. Whereas if you spot that tight shoulder and you're like, oh, my shoulder's tight, oh, that's not very nice, it's going to stay tight. Or, oh, I wonder if that came from when I lifted that piece of wood 5 years ago, it's not going to change or something, because you're creating a story around it as well. Your attention is now intention. It's carrying that weight that's unhealthy. And that's where the sort of skill of neutral attention comes in. I would use my cruder term of indifference to a certain extent.
I really like that. I'm going to go play with this. Walking into clinic with an indifference to outcome. It doesn't mean I don't care, and it doesn't mean I'm not compassionate. It's just like being indifferent, like do the work and whatever happens, happens. Like attentively soaked into the moment and indifferent.
Yeah, because you're not in charge of the outcome. You're only in charge of the causes anyway. So the outcomes will happen if the causes are correct. So therefore, I don't worry about them too much.
Yeah, I love it. That's our job as doctors. We're in charge of the causes. We are not in charge of the outcome.
That's how I see it. Otherwise, you just get stressed when it doesn't go right.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Wow. Well, I was going to say enlightening, but I don't know anything about enlightenment. But it certainly has got my attention focused in a slightly different way. So I appreciate that.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for the chat. It was nice. It was nice chatting with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been fun. If people want to find you on the internet, how do they find you?
Oh, they can just search my name. I don't like to advertise. People can find me if they want. They'll track me down. The more people that find me, the more responsibility I have. So I'm in hiding.
All right. So if you're looking for Damo, don't look for him.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
All right. Perfect. All right, man. Thanks so much. This has really been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. Thank you.
The longer I practice, the more I realize that there are some fundamentals we often talk about that, in truth, I have either little understanding or outright confusion. This idea of intention, what it is, and how it plays out in our work, that would be one of those. Damo's perspective on cultivating our attention rather than intention is like having a horizon line to help orient up from down. That attention can help with seeing what's unfolding in the moment instead of trying to fit the ever-unfolding phenomena of the world into a mental model or idea. Attention bespeaks a kind of receptivity that allows for informed action and opens a door into the wei-wu-wei, the doing of not doing. And most of all, that we don't have to dedicate our lives to unceasing cultivation to be a pretty good doctor. We can cultivate enough and leave room for a full human life. That, to me, sounds like something that's within my reach. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.